When we do a game, obviously, the storytelling is what talks most to the people and is what most coherent in the idea of a hotel life experience game. We also had a great accent on the diversity, so diversity of gender, diversity of ethnicity, diversity of ages as well.
We are working from a base that does not exist yet. We are really working on the futuristic vision of Pullman hotels. And that means that the design is brilliant, it's absolutely beautiful.
Hello everyone, welcome to the behind the scene of the Accor SOP Game. Today I'm with Pascaline, VP Learning and Development at Accor. And my name is Laurane. I'm the game designer and project manager at Emraude, and I worked exclusively on the co-creation of this amazing game that is the SOP Game.
Thank you, Laurane. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm very happy and proud to welcome you here. It's the Accor Academy. It's the place where we train all the hoteliers, so the hotel experts, the artists who work in the Accor hotels. And it's my pleasure really to welcome you today.
Thank you for being here. So we have been working together for maybe over a year now. And so we've learned a lot about the SOP game. Maybe it's good to introduce a little bit for the people listening what's an SOP and why we started to create this game together about a year ago.
Yes, you're right. It sounds like a weird language, right? When we say SOP, so actually it stands for Standard Operating Procedures. So Standard Operating Procedures are a very precious element. It's a very strong content that we have within Accor. It's been actually created by the guest experience teams at a global level in order to support the artists, so the hotel employees, to work on their daily tasks. So whoever you are, whenever you work under an Accor brand throughout the world, you have those standard operating procedures. It guides you on how to do your daily tasks, like for instance, how to welcome a guest, or how to cook some dishes, or how to cleanse a room with the proper Accor standards. So it's very precious, it's very useful, it's very expected from everyone, all the artists in the world. And our role as the Accor Academy was obviously to make it easy to understand, maybe to facilitate in a way the way those SOPs, standard operating procedures, are being communicated, shared, and then delivered to the teams. So actually this is the moment we started to think, okay, those SOPs are very precious, but it's mainly words. See, it's mainly words on documents. So it's a library. You really have extended lines of text, right, that guide you, as I said, on the operating procedures. And those files, those documents, they are stored in an Accor library. So a bit more than 1 year ago, maybe 2 years ago, we received a very consistent library of SOPs. And SOPs consist of PDF files. So it's really files, documents with a lot of words in it, lots of lines. As I said, super essential for the teams, but also not always the easiest to digest, to understand and to apply. So this is why we came to the conclusion, together with the learning and development teams, how can we make it more easy to understand, to digest in a way, to learn, and then to apply on the job.
Right.
So going from those PDF files into a gamified training solution was absolutely necessary in order to make it smooth, right, and applicable on the job.
Amazing. So at Accor, you decided basically to divide these trainings 1 hour long maximum, because it's pretty much what a training should last if you want the learner to really be involved in it. And so you decided to divide them into 4 different modules.
Yes.
So depending on the categories they are working in. So for example, food and beverage, called also F&B. You have also the housekeeping for the housekeeping team, the front office, so that englobes all the receptionists. And we have another one which is called transversal, or the essentials for all, which is a module that is to be played by everyone, so that to learn the basics, the guest satisfaction, the safety and security rules in Accor brands. And talking about Accor brands, you said that earlier, you obviously have lots of brands at Accor Group, as we all know, and we started with the first one, who was decided to be the pilot brand, and it's Ibis. So you have different Ibis. This one is simple Ibis, the red one, also called Family. And we started the game with this brand, so to be the pilot. So what we did at Emraude, that we gathered our team of developers, creators, designers, etc. And we started to create the game for Ibis. So when we received all of your SOP, because we worked on the base of your documents, what we did first is that we first filtered this SOP by category, by modules, and obviously what made sense to be put together to create different chapters, different games, so that the users would feel like a red thread, storytelling. Because when we do a game, obviously the storytelling is what talks most to the people and is what most coherent in the idea of a hotel life experience game. And by the way, this game, you wanted it to be a storytelling, but to be a storytelling, you need to be very realistic. So I remember that at first we were maybe thinking a 2D style, and then Accor decided to go maybe more to a 3D style with some characters. Can you talk a bit more about these characters and the 3D styles that you decided to have and why?
Yes, you're right, Laurane. For us, it was absolutely important that the characters are as realistic as possible. Because you see, we wanted to make sure that for the learners, they can really identify with the characters, so they can really, well, compare themselves. So they needed really to be as live as possible, as alive as possible. In order to do so, we thought that the 3D design was going to bring this to life in an even more easy way, even more dynamic. It was important for us to have the right postures, the right attitudes, to try as much as possible to show the behaviors and also the facial emotions, features, exactly. And I know that it's been sometimes for you very challenging. We had lots of conversations about the smile, for instance, and the look of the eyes, and also the hair, because maybe I was a bit demanding, but I had a very specific idea on the kind of result I wanted to have at the end.
Absolutely, yes, but we understood your reasons. That was very coherent with the game. So yes, I remember we had lots of back and forth with the hair, for example, because at first we had, for example, a character, Eva, our manager of the hotel, so it's pretty much our guide, guiding the user through the entire game. And she had long hair in front of her face like this, and you decided it was maybe not professional enough. And so we decided to tie her hair to make her look more professional. And then I remember the eyes also. So at first we used a reference that was very gamification style. So we had big eyes, massive eyes, with maybe the pupil being two in the center. So we decided to change this to be closer to what realism can be in 3D games. So we had lots of back and forth, but at the end we created some characters that were really close to the truth. And talking about that, we also had a great accent on the diversity. So diversity of gender, diversity of ethnicity, diversity of ages as well. And we also have characters with, for example, a wheelchair or hearing impaired to represent best diversity.
You're right. Actually, I remember now that it was very important and still is for us that the characters we are choosing, they really need to help us to support in a way Accor's policies when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. And it was also very important that they respect the standards. So you talked about the hair, for instance. Yes, you're right. It's part of the standards that you can't really have your hair in front of your eyes when welcoming guests. So that obviously needs to apply to the characters. I remember also having discussions about the name tag.
Yes.
You know that within the Accor policies, you're supposed to wear the name tag close to your heart.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why exactly that has to be honest. So all these tiny details, they aim at making it as realistic as possible.
Exactly, yeah. And we had references for the different uniforms. So the more we were evolving through the different brands of the group, the more we're creating uniforms, obviously. So we started with Ibis uniforms, and then we created the same but different colors for Ibis Styles, which is a an adaptation of the game for the brand. And then we created the other uniforms for the different characters, for the food and beverage, for the kitchen characters inside and the waiters outside the kitchen. We created also a porter for the Pullman brand. So we didn't have this character for the previous brands, but so we always evolved in terms of uniforms and using your references to be the result we want to have at the end. So being the closest to the reference possible, so that the user that will be doing this game will recognize his uniform, will recognize himself in this game.
And I know one of the challenges, I found it super interesting working with you, was also the work on the textures. Because I remember that when talking about the uniforms, there was, for instance, this woman with, I think she's a housekeeper or a housekeeping manager. She has this silk-like touch.
She's the housekeeping.
She's the housekeeping manager.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know it's been a challenge for you to work on this texture, so it's kind of shiny, silky, but doesn't look like plastic or whatever. So
which is very challenging in 3D, because sometimes whenever you create the uniform in the software we use, and once you put it in development, you have a difference. Because the lighting is different, because the code will not take it exactly as it is. So it's very challenging, but I think we made something very close to the reference, and we did very beautiful characters with that.
Yeah.
And we also had, for example, the diversity in terms of ages. So we first had only young characters, I don't know if you remember that, and then we started to evolve to more diversity in ages, whereas in the staff, but also for the client and everyone involved.
I also remember that, for instance, for Novotel, you had at some point to create a child, because that's part of the Novotel standards that we want to welcome families. So that includes obviously the children. So I know there was also this young age to create. And I also remember this older customer, I think that's Miss Manzini. She's also changed hair, and you managed to create some wrinkles, so very fine details that make it more realistic.
Exactly. So our character evolved through the brands, and as you said, we also have this child that represents the family-oriented target of Novotel, and we also have this reflection on our 3D scenes, because we created 4 3D scenes for the games. So we had the lobby, we had the corridor, we had a bedroom, and we had a restaurant. So we had all those 4 scenes created for the game, and obviously one for each brand. And we represented this type of target of the brand in our scenes as well. For example, for Novotel, we have a kids corner, so you can see the little teepee with the play on the wall, and the toys that you can play with. And actually we have a game where you actually have to store back the toys in the box. So we wanted to really create emotions maybe in the learner to recognize some specificities of his own hotel.
And I think for the learners it's probably the most engaging part, because once they start playing, they probably don't expect that much detail and that much realism in the scenes. So the example you just shared about Novotel, I think is brilliant, because when they discover this kids area, they're like, oh my gosh, they really spend the time, they really know our brand, they really understood who we are, and now I recognize something which is familiar with my day-to-day job. And you know, talking about this breakfast for Novotel, I also remember we decided to create this kids corner in the breakfast area. So that was also something completely new. We decided to have a lower table where the kids will be able to create their own waffles. So there was this waffle maker there as well. We had some discussions around what type of waffle maker. So that was also very nice. We created those big chocolate jars and jam jars. So very playful for the kids, so they could really feel welcomed as well in the game. So it's again one other way so that the learners can really recognize the reality of their days.
Lots of back and forth as well for the scenes, because the same as for the characters, we wanted to be the closest possible to the references. So obviously we could not represent all of the hotel in the world, but you selected with Accor some that you wanted to represent. For example, we could talk about the Ibis Styles bedroom, which is a very strong and bold choice. I remember it's the disco theme. Maybe you want to talk about this.
Yes, you're right. Actually, creating this kind of games, I realized with time that you really need to take decisions. Sometimes you need to take stands. And when it comes to Ibis Styles, for instance, there are as many designs as there are hotels. Because one Ibis style is not like the other one. They all have their own specific identity. So obviously we had to choose. And we went for this one, you're right, it's the disco design, which is very colorful, playful. This is what we liked. We thought, okay, let's be bold with this one. And I think there was a nice area of expression, of creation, probably for your teams. Because yes, there's pink, there's purple, there are vibrant colors everywhere. And you can really feel this modern touch.
Exactly. And so what we did is that actually we took every scene we created for Ibis, and then we changed the color and the texture for Ibis Styles.
Yeah.
So keeping the same furnitures, but changing these 2 points to adapt it for Ibis Styles. And for example, we did the same in the restaurant. We added some disco touches everywhere, so we can feel that we really had this Ibis Styles feature and specification.
Yeah, actually, it's one challenge that I had from my side at Accor. It's also to discuss with the brands, because I'm learning and development, but I'm not responsible for the brand identity. So we have also these internal conversations with the brands, with the guest experience teams. We also involve the general managers of the concerned hotels, because we want to make sure that every stand we take, every bold decision we make is gonna echo also with them, that it's gonna make sense for everyone.
Absolutely.
And together with the brands, we had to sit sometimes long, because we really needed to discuss together, okay, which room do we want Emraude to represent? Do you want it, how big do you want it to be? Is it close to the reality? Is it the perfect hotel, or is it the realistic hotel? And then you need to find the right balance, of course, and try then to create that in your 3D universe.
Exactly, and we had some discussions about, for example, the lights. How do you want the light to be set up in the room? Do you want it to be dark? Do you want it to be very luminous? We had discussions about the texture. For example, we had this column in the restaurant for Novotel that has a very shiny texture, so we started with it. And I think after we took it off, maybe, and we worked a lot with the different textures on the wall, on the ceiling, on the floor, as well as for the glasses, for example. We worked on the transparent texture that we had. So in 3D it's very challenging, as you know now. The transparent texture is something that we create with difficulty, because it has to calculate and reflect perfectly the light in the scene. So we had lots of back and forth, if you want to talk about this a little bit more. For the buffet, for example, we had some recipient in a transparent mode.
Yes, I think the example you just mentioned about plastic is very interesting, because you can really tell how technique and how difficult this can be. One of the SOPs says that single-use plastic is forbidden within the Accor hotels. So obviously we can't use plastic. And going back to the breakfast buffet, one of the games was about spotting the errors. One of the errors being that a single-use plastic cup is being used for coffee. And it's a challenge, because you want the learners to see that it's plastic, so they need to recognize from this transparent texture that it's plastic and not glass. Because glass would be the good answer, but we want them to see it's plastic. So it's a very, very tricky one, because it needs to be visual. You only have your eyes to tell. So the realism needs to be as close as the reality as possible.
Right, and we also had a game, so a game mechanic where you have to spot the errors in your scene on the bar. So we had different glasses, different drinks, for example, a whiskey, a cocktail, a glass of water, etc. And so we had to understand what was inside of the glass and if the user had to spot an error in it. So this was also very tricky, because we needed to be sure that the user would not be frustrated if he was not spotting an error, or if he was spotting an error when there is not. And so we had to really talk about this a long time. So it was very tricky, because we had to really be close to the reality and make it test by your task force, or your GM, your general managers, and ourselves at Emraude internally, to know if it was not frustrating for the user, to see if they could really target the errors immediately, or if it was maybe too difficult, and so they would have got the wrong answer when they really gave their best.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think it's also one of the other challenges we have is that it's a learning game. It's not an assessment. So that means that it needs to be challenging for the learners because we want them to discover things and learn. But if it's too hard, then they're going to be frustrated, they're going to fail. And at the end of the day, they're going to, not learn anything. They will just remember from it that it was too hard and so. So I think it's also a very, very tricky one to find this right balance. So there needs to be hints sometimes. You need to help them, but it also can't be too obvious, otherwise you completely lose the learning method.
Exactly. So we had maybe different type of difficulties along the game, some games being more difficult and some games being more maybe obvious, but going back to the basics, because all the game was this, about going back to the basics. So it was very necessary to have maybe obvious things, but that needed to be retaken from the beginning as well. And so to regroup all of these scenes that we have, these 4 scenes, we wanted to create for the transversal game, so the essentials for all, a map, so a global map that would appear in the center of the screen for the user, so that he knows exactly where he is, what role he's going to take for the next challenge. And so we had this map created, a common map for Ibis Styles and Novotel. So with little Easter eggs from there and there, from the 3 brands. But for Pullman, we created another map, a very different one, because Pullman had a very different structure of architectural designs. We wanted something very unique, something that maybe does not exist yet in the different Pullman. It's their vision of the future, their image for the premium brand that they are. So we recreated these scenes with a very different kind of references, and we added some little features from there and there in the scenes. For example, I remember the phone. We had this discussion about the phone that is using the artist, the receptionist, on the front desk. So she was first using the phone with a cord, and you gave us the feedback that it was maybe a bit outdated. So we created another phone for the artist to have it without the cord that we actually applied for all of our brands. So these little details were very important in the game. I don't know if you have any memories of others.
Yes, and it's good that you're mentioning Pullman, because I know for Pullman it was another kind of challenge. As you said, we are working from a base that does not exist yet. We are really working on the futuristic vision of Pullman hotels. And that means that the design is brilliant, it's absolutely beautiful. But sometimes we had to take also different choices because it had to remain 100% operational. So I remember, for instance, the conversation we had about the bed, because the bed we had as a reference is close to the floor. But operationally speaking, housekeepers can't use the vacuum cleaner then below the bed. So then we were, how are we going to do that? That's the moment we decided to lift the bed and to add some bed lifters on the 4 corners to make sure that there's enough space for the vacuum cleaner to go. So these are those discussions and moments where you think, oh, I thought that was done, I thought we were ready, but then we need to go back to the reality again and be challenged probably by the operations.
Absolutely.
I also remember, and that's now back to the F&B, food and beverage game, on the breakfast table. I think we had those heating plates at the beginning, and then I came back and said, okay, no, it's not like that in reality. You don't have those gestures. So it's more been replaced now with heating trays, which are much more close to the reality and what the premium brands would expect, right? So we have those warming heating lights above the dishes that keep them warm all along the breakfast time.
Exactly, yes. We had lots of details like this in the restaurant. I don't know if you remember the kid chair, the high chair. Oh, yeah. We first had something in wooden texture, and then we had to change it for more plastic, more natural high chair that some parent would use. So plastic on the top, you know, to be easier to clean.
Exactly. It's always reality and operations. It can't be just dreamy. Otherwise, for the artists, for the ones who are going to play, they're not going to recognize it. It's going to seem fake, right? And then you lose the entire benefit.
Right. And the same for the same high chair, we had stairs very straight like this. So you asked me to incline them to make it more natural for a kid that can try to climb a little bit
Exactly.
to go up his high chair.
You know, it's because I'm a mother. I was looking at this chair with very vertical wooden sticks, and I thought, oh my gosh, the kid is gonna fall.
Yeah.
So it was also, okay, what do you remember from reality, and how do you then recreate that in the 3D environment?
Right. Talked earlier about the breakfast buffets. So we had lots of back and forth as well on this one because we wanted to be the closest possible to reality. So we had our food design in 3D, obviously. So we had the food design on the buffets, but also we had it in some game mechanics. For example, I'm thinking about drag and drop. So a game where you have to take an image or a text and drop it in the correct order or box. And we had a game like this where you had to match the right food element with the right color cutting board. So for example, the meat, you have to cut it on the red cutting board. I learned that thanks to the SOP game. And to really match the DNA we wanted for the game, we designed as well those food elements in 3D. So this was a great way to really be involved in the game mechanic and in the game.
I think one of the things which is the most engaging for the learners is the different types of mechanics that we have.
Right.
Because as you said, we have 1 hour by game. So 1 hour for the front desk, 1 hour for food and beverage, 1 hour for housekeeping, and 1 hour for essentials for all. So basically for one learner, they're going to spend 2 hours playing. They're going to have the essentials for all, which is common for everyone.
Right.
Plus they're going to add either front desk, F&B, or housekeeping. So in order to keep them motivated all along the 2 hours, you need to have plenty of solutions and innovations so that they never get bored, actually. So I think that was one of the challenges, and one of the things that you created with your expertise was this variety of game mechanics. So there are those drag and drops, which make it super playful because it's very visual. But you also have some dialogues sometimes where you need to decide which statement is true, which other is false.
Right.
There are also some dialogues between 2 persons, and you need to say, okay, who's right, who's wrong. There are moments where you are timed, so you need to play fast because then you only have 20 or 30 seconds to answer. I also remember the satisfaction gauge. So the more good answers you give, the more your guest will be satisfied, and then the gauge goes up to the green side. So all those various, I would say, mechanics ensure that for the learners it's never boring. It's always actually a new experience in the game. Right.
So we had these little tricks to keep the learner entertained, I would say. Yeah. For example, we had also a quest at the very beginning. So at the very beginning we have a video that is personalized for each brand. So you can see or Ibis Styles, etc., etc. And the narrator is telling you about a little secret that you have to find a secret room. And to find that secret room you have to collect 3 fragments of cards. And how do you collect them? Well, you have to obviously finish different chapters. So 1 chapter, 1 fragment of a card. So this really helps as well as the game mechanics to keep the learner really entertained and motivated to finish the game. And this was very important because we really needed the user to have a minimum of success to finish the game. So as you said before, it is not an assessment, but you still have to make the user goes back to his day-to-day routine with something that he actually learned and will remember. So you wanted to implement a minimum rate. Yeah. If you want to talk about this, maybe.
Yes, you're right. Actually, my intention was more to make them proud of what they achieved. So I wanted to make sure that in order to finish the game and to keep the motivation high for success, that the success would be recognized. We also know that in the world of learning, the idea of receiving a certificate at the end of the training is very key. Most of the learners, they see it as a recognition, as a way to, a reward after the hard work they've done. So we decided to have a minimum of success. So you need to reach 80% of good answers in order to really finalize the game and get your certificate. So that's the way to make sure that they're going to really try their best to meet the success.
Exactly. So we worked a lot on the outboarding. This was very, very specific and precise. We wanted something very detailed. So we had, for example, this outro video, so the same as for the intro one, but you could see, for example, the different colors of the brand. You could see also the premise of the brand. Wait. You could see also the premise of the brand. For example, Ibis, it is here to make it possible, so you can go get it. Now I know it by heart. Yeah. And we had it printed on the card that we receive at the end, that is recomposed. Yeah. And this outro video led you to your outboarding, so with your score, your personal score, as well as your hotel average score. And this was very important because we wanted to raise the competition between the users. The competition always works in the game like this. Always works because it's very fun to be in competition with maybe the Ibis down the street and other brands. Well, it was actually by brand, so only competition between the same brands. But yeah.
Yes, and one of the things I really appreciate in the outro movie is that the learners at the end, he gets a trophy, right? Yes. And he received it in a kind of arena where all the characters that he's been playing with in the game are there to encourage and clap their hands. And I think it's a very, very nice moment because you recognize, I don't know, the artists who welcomed you at the front desk or during the F&B game and so on. So you see all of them and they are here to applaud you. I think it's a very nice touch at the end of the game to feel really rewarded as you're being part of a family, right?
Yes, a nice ending with all the characters that you saw in the game, actually. Yeah, exactly. And so to talk a bit more about this outboarding, we have what we call the certificate. So this certificate is given to the user if he gets more than 80% of success. Yeah. And you can also download it. So there's this idea of being proud of giving this time to learn more and to remember these basics of the SOPs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said earlier, it was important for us to make it a learning game and not an assessment. We did not want the learners to feel that they are being tested on their knowledge. So for us, it was important that when you don't answer correctly, it's not like beep, a big red light that says you're wrong. You know. So I know you found a very smart way to make it a bit more soft in a way.
Yes, exactly. So at first, it's true that if you had lots of wrong answers, you could see that red light a lot. Yeah. So you had this pop-in, we call pop-in with the feedback, being circled in red with the big wrong title on it. So maybe it was a bit
harsh.
Yeah, exactly. So we first changed only the text. We went from wrong to you can do better. But then we suggested 3 different oranges that could be better to replace the red, and you chose with your team what felt best for you to be less of a punishment than the wrong in red like this. Exactly. Yeah. So this is the part, very UX, UI, that is super important in the game. The way you will see the game, you will perceive it, you will click on the buttons, everything will be smooth from the beginning to the end, and this is the very important part of the game as well.
There's another type of gamification which I find interesting. It's also the possibility to play in a classroom because there are 2 ways to play. There's the way where you play alone as a learner, and the other solution which you provided, which is to say, okay, we can also organize this gamified experience in a classroom with your colleagues. I also found it was a nice way to play, but then together. And then you can also recreate this competition feeling amongst one hotel team. So one little team will play against the others, and the trainer can really, play with this gamified experience.
Yeah, true, exactly, yes. And what's great also for it to be very inclusive for everyone is that we have 18 languages, maybe more to come. So this is amazing because the user can choose his languages at the very beginning on the onboarding. So this is very amazing because the user can choose his language on the onboarding screen. And you also have some voiceover. So we didn't talk about that yet, but you have voiceover on some type of mechanics. which help the user. Maybe he doesn't have and he doesn't want to read the entire text for an hour long, although he can quit the game and has his progression saved at all time. But it's good also to mix it with some voiceover, so you can listen the game and keep playing, which is also obviously available in the classroom mode, so that the game master presenting the session doesn't have to read the whole content like he's giving a lecture or a class. So to conclude this behind the scene, how would you recommend other people and actors in the hospitality environment to do more trainings like the one we created together?
Great question. I would say that the most important is to be very serious when it comes to your content. You need to be very strong on your convictions, what you want them to learn, what's the message you want to bring to the learners. But then, once this content is solid, robust, then you need to find a way that the experience, the format, is super playful. Because the more serious the topic is, the more engaging you want the experience to be. So I think the format needs to be engaging. You need to use storytelling, gamification. These are just tools to make sure that the content is landing well for the learners. So this is really something I learned also thanks to you with this experience, that you can have a serious content but not be serious in the way that the learners are going to play, right?
Right.
That for them it's going to be playful, engaging, that they're going to have fun, and that the more they play, the more they will learn, and it's basically what we want to achieve.
That's an excellent way to conclude, Pascaline, and thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast today, and we'll see you soon for another one.